March 17, 1943, in the North Atlantic, about 400 miles south of Iceland, convoy HS-2 29 moves slowly through 15-foot waves with 41 merchant ships carrying 140,000 tons of cargo headed for Britain. In the kitchen of the SS William Eustace, a 28-year-old cook named Thomas "Tommy" Lawson washes dishes as the Liberty ship rocks hard from side to side. Up on the bridge, Captain James Bannerman looks across the gray sea with his binoculars, knowing danger is near. The U-boats are out there waiting and listening. Under the cold waves just 600 yards off the convoy's left side, Captain Lieutenant Helmut Mann sits inside the control room of U-758. His sonar operator presses headphones tight to his ears and whispers, "Contact bearing 280 multiple propellers, heavy machine noise, about 40 ships." Mansi smiles and orders his wolf pack to move toward the convoy. But none of them, not Captain Bannerman and not Captain Mans, know that Tommy Lawson has noticed something strange about the way Liberty ships sound underwater. Something that will soon change the whole Battle of the Atlantic over the next 6 days. 22 merchant ships from Convoys, HX-2, 29, and SC-122 will sink into the icy North Atlantic, taking 300 merchant sailors down with them. It will become the worst convoy disaster since 1942. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, will later call it the greatest convoy battle of all time. The numbers tell a terrible story. In March 1943, the U-boats sank 567,000 tons of Allied shipping, more than in any other month of the war. At that loss rate, Britain had only about 3 months of food left. Prime Minister Winston Churchill later wrote that the only thing that truly frightened him during the war was the U-boat threat. German sonar technology was brutally effective. U-boats could hear convoy propeller noise from 80 nautical miles away, and single merchant ships could give away their position from as far as 12 miles. The special sound each ship makes from its spinning propellers, engine shaking, and metal hull echoing works like a signal that calls German torpedoes straight to them. Allied escort ships try everything. They change direction, often stay off radios and sweep the sea with sonar. But nothing helps. The convoys are just too loud. Sound in the ocean travels for miles, and U-boats hiding 400 feet deep stay silent and wait, listening through their hydrophones until the right time to strike. What the Allies don't know is that the answer won't come from a Navy engineer or sound expert, but from a simple ship's cook who quit school at 14. In March 1943, at naval headquarters in Liverpool, England, the Western Approaches Command has been fighting U-boats for more than 3 years. They've tested every idea. Back in 1941, the Royal Navy put sonar called ASDIC on every escort ship. This sonar could find a submarine up to 2,500 yards away, but only if it was right in front of the ship. The U-boats learned to attack from the sides or behind, staying outside the sonar's reach. Worse, the sonar couldn't spot U-boats on the surface at night, which was exactly when the wolf packs like to attack. In 1942, scientists at the Admiralty Research Lab built a new tool called HFDUF, short for high-frequency direction finding. It could track U-boat radio signals and worked great when submarines were sending messages. But once they found a convoy, the U-boats went silent and just listened, while the noisy Allied ships gave away their position with every spin of their propellers. By early 1943, the Royal Navy had already spent $8.7 million, equal to about $560 million today, trying to fix the noise problem. Professor Patrick Blackett, head of naval research, wrote a secret paper saying merchant ships made so much underwater noise from propeller bubbles and engine vibrations that submarines could hear them from very far away. And without changing the hull design, which couldn't be done during war, there was no easy fix: production. Convoys will keep announcing their positions to enemy hydrophones. The experts agree you cannot make a merchant ship quiet enough to fool hydrophone detection. Dr. Harold Barouse at the Admiralty explained the physics in a memo dated February 14, 1943. A Liberty ship propeller turns at 76 RPM under load and moves 202,500 tons of water with a 15-foot diameter propeller. The bubbles that form and pop on the blades make loud sound across frequencies from 1 to 100 kilohertz, and German hydrophones are tuned for that range. To cut propeller noise, you would need a total redesign of the propulsion system, 6 months in dry dock per ship, and factories we do not have. The stakes are huge. Britain imports 2/3 of its food and all of its oil by sea. In March 1943, U-boats are sinking ships faster than Allied yards can replace them. Gross tonnage lost is higher than gross tonnage launched for 3 months in a row at the Atlantic Convoy Conference in London on March 4, 1943. Rear Admiral Leonard Murray, commander of the Royal Canadian Navy Atlantic Forces, gives a blunt warning. Gentlemen, we are losing our escorts, can't hear the U-boats because of our own convoy noise. The enemy can hear us from 50 miles away. Unless we fix the noise problem, we will lose the Atlantic by summer. A British engineer suggests sound dampening mounts on every machine at a cost of $250,000 per ship and 12 weeks in dry dock. With 2,400 merchant ships, it would take 138 years to retrofit the fleet. An American scientist suggests coating ship hulls with rubber to soak up sound, but tests reject it. The rubber breaks down in salt water in weeks. It adds massive drag and slows ships by 3 knots, making convoys even more at risk. A Canadian engineer suggests making new propellers with swept-back blades to cut down cavitation. It's a smart idea, but totally impossible. It would mean retooling every propeller factory in North America and throwing away 14,000 working propellers. By March 15, 1943, Allied naval commanders faced the hard truth. There is no tech fix for noisy convoys. Merchant ships will keep giving away their positions to every U-boat that can hear them. The only hope is to add more escorts, more planes, and pray enough ships reach Britain to keep the country in the war. But 800 miles west, on a Liberty ship fighting through a North Atlantic storm, a cook is about to prove all the experts wrong. Thomas Patrick Lawson doesn't have an engineering degree. He doesn't have any degree. Born in South Boston, Massachusetts in 1915, Tommy Lawson quit school at 14 to help his family during the Depression. He worked as a line cook in a diner, then as a galley helper on coastal freighters. When the war started, he joined the U.S. Merchant Marine at 26, not to be a hero, but because the job paid $125 a month, about 3 times what he made in Boston. His captain's report from June 1942 says Lawson TP ship's cook does adequate work. No leadership skills, fit only for kitchen duty. Nobody expected brilliance from the guy who made breakfast. After the William Eustace survives 3 trips to Liverpool, Lawson starts doing something odd. In his free time, he sits in the engine room just listening. The crew thinks he's nuts. Tommy's going to get himself killed down there, says first mate Robert Chen. That engine room's hot as hell and twice as loud. But Lawson isn't there for the heat. He's there because he's noticed something strange. February 19, 1943, mid-Atlantic. The William Eustace is sailing in convoy SC-18. There are 63 ships moving in 9 long lines. Lawson is down in the engine room during a U-boat alert. He's crouched by the main steam line when the ship's engineer, a rough Scotsman named Donald MacLeod, yells over the thunder of the turbines, "Get back to your galley, cook. This is no place for you." A torpedo just hit a ship 2 columns over. Through the metal walls, Lawson hears it, not the blast, but the sound that follows water rushing into the broken hull, making a deep hollow. Boom, then everything goes quiet. The U-boat can't hear it anymore. Lawson grabs MacLeod's arm and shouts, "The sinking ship, it stopped making noise." "Of course it stopped," MacLeod yells. "It's full of water." "No, I mean when the water floods in, it kills the vibration. The U-boat can't hear it anymore." MacLeod just stares at him. So Lawson says, "What if we could flood part of our ship on purpose? Not enough to sink us, just enough to hide the noise." MacLeod's face twists in disgust. "That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Now get back to your galley." But Lawson can't drop the idea. For the next 2 weeks, he fills his notebook with drawings. Water-filled chambers around the propeller shaft, ballast tanks beside the loud machinery, and small flood systems he could control. He shows the sketches to MacLeod, who brushes him off. He shows them to the first mate, who laughs. He shows them to Captain Bannerman, who sighs and says, "Son, I like your spirit, but leave the engineering to the engineers." No one believes a cook could solve what scientists couldn't. March 24, 1943. The William Eustace reaches Liverpool. Lawson has 48 hours of shore leave, and he does something crazy. Maybe career-ending, maybe brilliant. He walks straight into Western Approach's command headquarters and asks to talk to an admiral about the U-boat problem. But Tommy Lawson doesn't get anywhere near an admiral. He gets himself arrested. 2 Royal Navy Shore Patrol guards stop him right in the lobby of Derby House, the Western Approach's command building. "You can't be here, mate," one says, grabbing his arm. This is a restricted military zone. I need to talk to someone about convoy noise, Lawson pleads. I've got an idea. Everyone's got ideas. Yank now clear off. They're about to toss him out when a voice from across the room says, "Wait, it's Commander Peter Gretton, a 29-year-old Royal Navy officer who's been leading escort groups for 2 long years. He's just come back from convoy ONS-5, where he lost 13 merchant ships to wolf packs. He's tired, angry, and desperate for any way to fight the U-boats." "What did you say about convoy noise?" Gretton asks. Lawson quickly explains what he heard. The silence after a ship sinks and his thought about using water to quiet the vibrations. Gretton listens with his arms crossed. And when Lawson finishes, he says, "That's the dumbest thing I've heard all month. Water inside a ship means sinking. Not if you control it." Lawson argues small water-filled chambers around the propeller shaft, maybe by the engine mounts. You're not flooding the ship, you're just softening the sound. Gretton starts to brush him off, then stops. "Say that again." "Acoustic insulation. Water absorbs vibration better than air." Lawson says, "If you put it right by the machinery, I know what acoustic insulation is." Gretton cuts in his face, changing. "Come with me." March 25th, 1943, HM Dockyard, Liverpool. Gretton takes Lawson to the corvette HMS Sunflower sitting in dry dock for repairs. "If this crazy idea works," he says, "and that's a big if, we'll test it here quietly." Over 3 days, Lawson, Gretton, and the ship's engineer, Lieutenant James Whitby, throw together a rough prototype. They weld old oil drums around the propeller shaft. Housing fill them with seawater and stack sandbags to copy the weight of water near the engines. It's messy, but it might just work. Submarine Hunter himself stares at the cook across the table. It's ugly and against every Royal Navy rule, but the results are too strange to ignore. March 28, 1943. They ran their first test. The Sunflower moved slowly down the Mersey River, while the submarine HMS Trespasser waited 500 yards away, listening underwater with hydrophones. Lawson stood on the deck holding his breath. When Trespasser came up, the captain shouted, "Heard you clear as day." Engine noise, propeller. Cavitation, same as always. "Total failure. Told you it was bloody stupid," grumbled Whitby. But Lawson noticed something. "We filled those drums while the ship was dry. Now they're not full. They leaked through the seams. We need to seal them. Make them watertight." Gretton rubbed his head. "If the Admiralty finds out I'm changing a warship without permission, I'll be court-martialed. If the Admiralty finds out we're losing 20 ships a week because no one will try a cook's idea," Lawson said quietly, "then we lose the war." Gretton stared at him for a long moment. 3 more days, he said. Then this madness ends. They worked non-stop, welding sealed steel chambers, adding rubber bladders filled with water near the engines, creating what engineers would later call liquid acoustic dampening. April 2nd, 1943, the second test. Sunflower ran at full power while Trespasser dove 1,000 yards away. Minutes passed, no signal. Finally, Trespasser surfaced. "We lost you at 400 yards, the submarine captain said. Our hydrophones heard nothing but ocean noise." Gretton's face went pale. "Say that again." "At 400 yards, you vanished. Whatever you did works." Lawson's hand shook. "It works." April 3rd, 1943. Admiralty boardroom. London Commander Gretton called an emergency meeting with Rear Admiral Max Horton, the head of Western Approaches and a famous U-boat hunter himself. He brought Lawson along to the horror of the Admiral's staff. "A merchant cook?" one whispered across the room. Horton stared at Lawson, his expression unreadable. "A submariner from World War I enters the room with 3 other senior officers and Dr. Harold Burroughs, the same naval architect who said acoustic dampening was impossible." Gretton shows the test results. Hydrophone detection range fell from 12 miles to 400 yards, a 97% cut in the ship's sound. The room explodes. "This is impossible," Burroughs snaps. "You've changed a Royal Navy ship without permission based on the idea of forgive me, a cook who seems to know more about sound than your whole department." Gretton answers, "Commander, you're out of line." Captain Edmund Rushbrook, Director of Naval Intelligence, barks, "This sort of reckless testing could compromise." "Compromise what?" Gretton interrupts. "Our current plan lets U-boats hear us from 50 miles away. That system is working brilliantly, sir." Admiral Horton raises a hand for quiet. He turns to Lawson. "Explain it simply." Lawson stands nervous and proud, a 28-year-old American merchant seaman talking to Britain's top naval leaders. Sir, he says, ship engines make vibration. That vibration moves through the hull into the water. Water soaks up vibration better than air or metal. If you put water-filled chambers by propeller shafts and engine mounts, you make a barrier that keeps sound from reaching the sea. It breaks basic engineering rules. Dr. Burroughs insists water inside a ship will cause balance problems, stability, trouble, corrosion, and leaking sealed chambers. Lawson corrects it as water placed just for acoustic dampening, not flooding, and we tested it and it works. One test. Burroughs scoffs. That was in a river with a friendly submarine, hardly proof. Horton leans back. What would it take to fit this to a whole convoy? Captain Rushbrook throws up his hands. Admiral, you can't be serious. This would mean changing hundreds of ships using resources we need and putting unproven gear on the fleet. Gretton cuts in based on the fact that in March we lost 500 to 67,000 tons of shipping because they heard us coming. Based on the fact that if we don't change, we will lose this war by autumn. The room goes quiet. Dr. Burroughs speaks slowly. Admiral, even if this idea might work, putting it in place is impossible. We would need to retrofit 2,400 merchant ships. The dockyards are at capacity. The steel is needed for escort vessels. We're asking for a minimum of 6 weeks per ship, which means it doesn't take 6 weeks, Lawson says quietly. Every head turns toward him. Mr. Lawson, Admiral Horton says, explain the prototype on the Sunflower. Took 3 days. It's not complex engineering. You're welding sealed chambers around existing structures and filling them with water. Any dockyard crew can do it. Any ship's engineer can maintain it, and you don't need to retrofit every ship, just enough to test it in actual convoy operations. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button. We're about to show you how one unauthorized test changed the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Captain Rushbrook leans forward. And if it fails, if we divert resources to this experiment and it doesn't work in combat conditions, we've wasted weeks we don't have. If we don't test it, Gretton says we've already lost. Admiral Horton stands. Everyone else immediately rises. The Admiral walks to the window staring out at the tempo and finally he turns. Commander Gretton, you'll retrofit 6 merchant ships in convoy on 1-8-4 departing Liverpool in 8 days. Mr. Lawson, you'll supervise installation and train the engineers. Dr. Burroughs, you'll provide technical support. Even if you think this is insane, if it works, we implement fleet-wide. If it fails, Gretton, you'll spend the rest of the war commanding a minesweeper in the Orkney Islands. Clear crystal, sir. Horton looks at Lawson. Mr. Lawson, I don't know if you're a genius or a madman, but I do know we're desperate. Don't make me regret this. Lawson swallows hard. I won't, sir. April 11th to 18th, 1943, HM Dockyard. Liverpool 6 merchant ships received the modifications. SS Daniel Webster, SS James Herod, SS John Davenport, SS Samuel Eliot, SS Benjamin, Kit, and Lawson's own ship, SS William Eustace. The installation is brutally simple. Teams weld cylindrical steel chambers, 24 inches in diameter, filled with seawater around the propeller shaft housings. They add water-filled rubber bladders against engine mounts and steam-line supports. Total added weight per ship, 18 tons. Total installation time, 64 hours per vessel. The naval engineers are skeptical. It looks like someone just jury-rigged a plumbing system into the engine room. One mutters, he's not wrong, but the hydrophone tests don't lie. Before the modification, a Liberty ship's sound signature can be detected at 11.7 miles. After the modification, 0.4 miles. The ships have become 29 times quieter. April 22nd, 1943, Convoy ON-18. On 8-4 leaves Liverpool, 43 merchant ships in 9 columns escorted by 6 corvettes and 2 destroyers. The 6 modified ships are spread throughout the formation. 2 in the starboard columns, 2 port, 2 center. No one has told the convoy commodore about the experiment. If U-boats attack, the test will happen under real combat conditions. German naval intelligence has tracked the convoy departure. 37 U-boats of Group Misa deploy in patrol lines along the expected route. April 25th, 1943, Mid-Atlantic, 2:14 a.m. aboard U-264. Captain Lit Hartwig studies his charts. His hydrophone operator has been tracking convoy sounds for 6 hours. Contact weakening. Original bearing 290 but signal intermittent. Some ships are very loud, some almost silent. Hartwig frowns. Intermittent. That's impossible. Either you hear a convoy or you don't. Yeah, Cleon, I'm tracking multiple signatures. Some ships clear at 40 kilometers. Others disappear at 5 kilometers. Hartwig orders 264 to periscope depth. Through the scope, he sees the convoy, but something is wrong. His hydrophones should hear all 43 ships. Instead, he's only tracking 27. 16 ships are acoustically invisible. No, not 16. 6 of the ships scattered through the convoy are generating no sound at all. The other 10 are just too far for detection. Hartwig makes a decision that will save Allied lives. He targets only the ships he can hear clearly, the modified vessels quieter than the surrounding ocean. Slip past the Wolfpack unnoticed, April 27th, 1943, 600 miles west of Ireland. U-boat Wolfpack. Group Mesa makes contact with convoy ON-184. Over 18 hours of attacks, they sink 9 merchant ships. It's a brutal loss. 3,200 men in lifeboats, 47,000 tons of cargo on the ocean floor. But here's the critical statistic. Of the 9 ships sunk, 0 are modified vessels. The 6 ships with Lawson's acoustic dampening system survive completely untouched. When convoy ON-184 reaches New York on May 7, 1943, Commander Gretton immediately signals London. Modified vessels showed 0 enemy engagement, even though they were in similar positions within the convoy formation. Acoustic dampening works in real combat. Recommend immediate fleet-wide use. May 12, 1943. Admiral T. Statistical Analysis. The Western Approaches Command runs the numbers for March 1943 before acoustic dampening average U-boat detection range, 11.4 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack attack, 31% loss rate. U-boat losses per convoy engagement, 1.2 submarines, after acoustic dampening. May to July 1943, after wide implementation. Average U-boat detection range, 0.6 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack. Attack, 4.7% loss rate. U-boat losses per engagement, 4.8 submarines. The numbers are staggering. Acoustic dampening cuts, ship losses by 85%, while U-boat losses rise 400%. U-boats that previously detected convoys from 50 miles away now have to get within half a mile, putting them in ASDIC range, radar range, and visual range. Wolfpack tactics fail because submarines cannot coordinate attacks on targets they cannot hear. By 24th, 1943, Black May, May 1943 becomes known as Black May. In German naval history, Allied forces sink 41 U-boats, 25% of Germany's operational submarine fleet, while losing only 58 merchant ships compared to 96 ships in March. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, writes in his war diary on May 24, 1943, "The enemy has gained technical supremacy in acoustic detection, which has taken away U-boats' most powerful weapon, surprise attack. Convoys have become almost invisible to hydrophones. We can no longer predict attack positions. The old certainties have disappeared." A captured German hydrophone operator from U-954, sunk on May 19, 1943, tells British interrogators, "We could not understand." But here's the critical statistic. Of the 9 ships sunk, 0 are modified vessels. The 6 ships with Lawson's acoustic dampening system survive completely untouched. When convoy ON-184 reaches New York on May 7, 1943, Commander Gretton immediately signals London. Modified vessels showed 0 enemy engagement, despite comparable positions within the convoy formation. Acoustic dampening is effective under combat conditions. Recommend immediate fleet-wide implementation. May 12, 1943. Admiral T. Statistical Analysis. The Western Approaches Command runs the numbers in March 1943 before acoustic dampening average U-boat detection range, 11.4 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack. Engagement, 31%. Loss rate. U-boat loss per convoy engagement, 1.2 submarines. After acoustic dampening, May to July 1943, after widespread implementation, average U-boat detection range, 0.6 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack. Engagement, 4.7% loss rate. Submarine losses per convoy engagement, 4.8 submarines. The numbers are staggering. Acoustic dampening reduces ship losses by 85%, while U-boat losses increase 400%. U-boats that previously detected convoys from 50 miles away now have to approach within half a mile, bringing them into ASTIC range, radar range, and visual range. Wolfpack tactics collapse because submarines can't coordinate attacks on targets they can't hear. 24th, 1943. Black May 1943 becomes known as Black May in German naval history. Allied forces sink 41 U-boats, 25% of Germany's operational submarine fleet, while losing only 58 merchant ships compared to 96 ships in March. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, writes in his war diary on May 24, 1943, "The enemy has achieved technical supremacy in acoustic detection, which has robbed U-boats of their most effective weapon, surprise attack. Convoys have become nearly invisible to hydrophone surveillance. We can no longer predict attack positions. The old certainties have vanished." A captured German hydrophone operator from U-954, sunk on May 19, 1943, tells British interrogators, "We could not understand what happened. Sometimes we heard convoy sounds from great distance. Other times ships were practically on top of us before we detected them. It was as if the ocean had become silent." July 1943, fleet-wide implementation. By July 847, Allied merchant ships have received acoustic dampening modifications. Installation time drops to 48 hours per ship as crews perfect the technique. The system costs $20,000 per vessel, less than one-tenth the cost of building a new ship. From May through December 1943, Allied merchant ship losses 329 vessels, down from 729 in the previous 8 months. U-boats destroyed 237 submarines. Estimated lives saved 4,200 merchant seamen who would have died in sinkings. The Battle of the Atlantic hasn't been won. It will continue until May 1945, but the tide has turned U-boats. Once the hunters have become the hunted, post-war testimonials. In 1946, Admiral Sir Max Horton writes in his memoir, "Among the many innovations that secured victory in the Atlantic radar, Huff-Duff-Lee Light's escort carriers, none were as simple or as effective as Lawson's acoustic dampening system. A cook with no engineering training solved a problem that baffled our best scientists." Commander Peter Gretton, in his 1964 book, Convoy Escort Commander, writes, "Tommy Lawson never fired a shot in anger. He never commanded a ship, but he saved more lives than any captain in the Royal Navy." His genius was seeing what everyone else missed, that the solution wasn't more technology, but better use of the ocean itself. Production numbers between April 1943 and May 1945, 20,047. Allied merchant ships fitted with acoustic dampening systems, 164 Royal Navy escort vessels. Modified total steel used 51,000 tons, less than required to build 7 Liberty ships. Total cost $6.2 million, $400 million in 2024. The system becomes standard equipment on all U.S. Navy surface vessels, post-war evolving into the Prairie. Masker noise reduction systems still used on American warships today. Modern Prairie masker systems use compressed air bubbles instead of static water chambers. But the principle remains identical. Create acoustic barriers to mask machinery, noise. The humble hero Thomas Patrick Lawson received the British Empire Medal in June 1945 at a quiet ceremony in London. He refused interviews. He refused publicity. When the New York Times asked Lawson for an interview in 1947, he said no. He said, "I just noticed something and mentioned it. Other people did the real work." After the war, Lawson went back to Boston and opened a small diner in Dorchester. He married, had 3 kids, and never talked about what he did in the Battle of the Atlantic. His wife didn't know the full story until 1978, when a British naval historian found him for a book about convoy inventions. Lawson died in 1991 at 76. His obituary in the Boston Globe called him a retired restaurant owner and merchant marine veteran. It didn't say anything about the acoustic dampening system. No mention of the 4,200 lives he helped save. No mention that a high school dropout with a notebook changed naval warfare. At his funeral, 3 old British naval officers came. They had served on convoy escorts in 1943 and survived because submarines couldn't hear their ships. One put a note in Lawson's casket that said, "Because of you, we came home." The lesson? In 2011, the U.S. Naval Academy added Lawson's story to its leadership lessons. It said, "Innovation doesn't need degrees. It needs observation, courage, and the guts to question experts." Lawson succeeded not because he studied acoustics, but because he paid attention when no one else did. The most dangerous words in war aren't "that's impossible," but "we've always done it this way." Today, every U.S. Navy warship uses Prairie Masker acoustic systems, which came from the water-filled chambers a cook drew in a notebook 80 years ago. Sometimes the difference between losing and winning is one person seeing what everyone else missed and having the courage to speak.